Hello, BookTube. As you may know, November is coming up fast. This tends to be the way when you're in the middle of October. And November is home to a number of different events, both on and off BookTube. The biggest one for nerdy bookish folk that's off BookTube is Nanowrimo, National Novel Writing Month, which takes place in November and for which you should be preparing right now. You should be doing Preptober right now and getting ready for writing 1,667 words of your novel in November. But that's a thing, that's a subject for another video. And another event, a fledgling little thing, its very first event, is New Worlds November. An event that I'm helping to co-host with a bunch of other great booktubers where we're talking about short science fiction short stories for the month of November. But the biggest and most impressive event of November for BookTube is Nonfiction November. The brainchild of the mighty Olive at A Book Olive, who's been doing this for a long, long time. And Nonfiction November is right around the corner. Olive just made her ebullient announcement video for this new season of Nonfiction November, and I'll leave a link to that video, but I wanted to make a video of my own now that it's finally time amplifying that on my own. Now, Nonfiction November is an event that Olive came up with to get you to read more nonfiction than you currently read for the month of November, or to get you to read some if you read none. It's important, as she stresses in her video, to know that you are a participant in Nonfiction November if you read nonfiction. Any nonfiction. You don't have to increase the amount that you're reading. You don't have to read exclusively nonfiction. You don't have to follow any of the prompts that she unveils in her video. You just have to read nonfiction. If you've done that, you're good as gold. But I wanted to go over the prompts. Olive always gives very general prompts that are very intentionally designed to be applicable in any kind of way. And the more inventive, the better. And the prompts are collection, industry, style, and treatment. And you can see from that those can be used in any kind of way, and lots of fun ways as well. And you'll see in Olive's video that she has pulled out the stops for all of the peripheries here. There's a TikTok. There's an Instagram. There's a very old and very popular Goodreads group. All kinds of stuff like that, of peripherals. But the main thing here is to get you to read nonfiction, especially if you think nonfiction isn't for you. If you have been trained by forced reading in school or textbooks of some kind to think of it as boring, monochromatic, not as involving as fiction, that is simply not true. And as Olive points out, and as I have pointed out for a long, long time as well, long before there was a BookTube, if you think that about nonfiction, it mainly means that you have not found the right nonfiction. And Nonfiction November is a perfect event to help you find the right nonfiction, because you're going to see lots and lots of people talking about it, including me. I will be talking quite a bit about nonfiction in November. I talk about a lot about nonfiction on this channel anyway. I infinitely prefer it to fiction. And usually my reading breakdown in any given month is 80-20, nonfiction to fiction. And I wanted to announce some of my plans for Nonfiction November, although I can't do a TBR. Olive's going to do a TBR in a little while, and I'm going to eagerly watch all the TBRs that you make. But I'm going to read too many books in the month of November to really do a convenient TBR. Instead, I thought I would give you sort of my general plan. Like I mentioned, New Worlds November happens in November. So as a host, I am involved in New Worlds November and will be reading fiction connected with New Worlds November. I'm also one of the hosts of Book Trek 2021, which is an ongoing reading experiment where we're reading Star Trek fiction. And the month of November, we're reading it show by show, and the month of November is Star Trek Voyager. Now, I'm hardly going to give up reading Star Trek Voyager. It's one of my favorite iterations of Star Trek. So I'll be reading Star Trek Voyager in November, and I will be reading science fiction short stories in November, and I will also be writing short science fiction for Nanowrimo. So it's very nicely linked as a theme. It'll all be science fiction related in November. But other than that, I am not going to read any other fiction in November. I'm going to goose up that percentage to about 99% to 1%. Fiction versus nonfiction versus fiction. The only fiction that I'm going to read in November is going to be the novels that I read or reread for Book Trek, the short fiction that I read for or reread for New Worlds November, and any fiction that I am actually commissioned to read and write about. Because I'm a reviewer. I'm not going to tell an editor who's never heard of BookTube, oh, I can't do that. So, but other than those three exceptions, I will be reading only nonfiction in November. And that's going to be a blast, an absolute blast. A large part of the nonfiction that I will read in November for Nonfiction November will be nonfiction that I would read in the normal course of things anyway. The nonfiction that's coming out in November. I read new releases in the American book market in all of the genres that I typically read. In November, I'm going to change that to nonfiction only in the genres that I read. So that will be general interest nonfiction, natural history, science, biography, actual history, military history, religion, religious history, but not romance, science fiction, mystery, historical fiction, not any of that. All the other genres that I read that are nonfiction, I'll be reading a lot more of those in November. I'm having a blast. I'm sure that I'll have a blast because Nonfiction November will serve to make me feel just a tiny bit less alone. I'm not knocking BookTube. You all know how much I love my imaginary friends on BookTube, but BookTube is still very much freighted towards fiction. And in Nonfiction November, I get more of a sense that people are at least trying or putting more of a spotlight on the nonfiction they're reading. That always makes me feel good. That always makes me feel like I have a little more company in all the nonfiction reading that I do. So I wanted to make this video to encourage you to join in on Nonfiction November. If, for instance, you think that you could read more nonfiction and you've always felt a little bit nagged by that fact, consider yourself officially nagged by me. You should read nonfiction in November. I bet you will like it. So those are your prompts if you want to do them. Collection, industry, style, and treatment. Very Olive-esque prompts. And I'll be checking in throughout the month. But we'll be talking a lot about nonfiction in November. I just wanted to add my little voice to Olive's video. I'll leave a link to hers down below. So join in, have some fun, read a piece of nonfiction, maybe read 10. And I'll be checking in during November. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.